Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Server Room. I'm Nandini, your host for the podcast, and today we have Aparna, who is the Senior Enterprise Analyst at Manage Engine. Welcome to the podcast, Aparna. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you so much for having me here. I've been listening to your episodes for a very long time, and it's been a very good learning experience for me, understanding
Okay.
different functions, different markets, and all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to be on the other side, and in a way, a little privileged too. Yeah, thank you so much for having me
It's a
here.
pleasure. It's a pleasure having you on. And I wanted to know a little bit about you, how you started your journey in tech, and maybe if you can like shed a little bit of light on that. I think we can start from there.
So my journey is pretty long, if
Okay.
I may say that. I started with Infosys, worked there for a couple of years, and then I wanted to dabble a little bit on entrepreneurship. Started a tiny e-commerce business, and it sort of did grow, but I ran out of cash very quickly because it's a more a VC funded kind of a environment then,
Mhm.
and I couldn't sustain. But after that, I did my MBA and I landed in Zoho.
Okay.
Um, I worked as a marketing analyst in the beginning. Spent a few years trying to understand how do we sell products, right? The simple question of when you look at in the market, there are just look at your shoes, right? Like there are so many varieties of shoes, and yet you go purchase by Nike,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So why does that happen, and how can I make people choose Manage Engine? So that's the curiosity that happened for 3 years, and that got me into product management and enterprise gig, which
Okay.
is basically trying to understand how different products work. What you're selling is the product. So if the product can sell itself,
Right.
then what better can it be? So that's how I sort of got into product management and then into the enterprise side of things too. So yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. So how long has it been?
it's my ninth year. Yeah, it's been quite a long journey.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. It
yeah,
is. That's
yeah.
good. So since the beginning, you've been part of Manage Engine.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. That's good. So have you had any important mentors or people who've had like a huge impact in your career?
Certainly, I think early on, my first manager here had
Mhm.
a huge impact on the way I approach things.
Okay.
Um, a lot of what gets shipped is one thing, but the actual integrity of a person comes when something fails, right?
Right. Yeah.
I learned a lot of lessons from my manager then, Kumaravel, about handling that failure and that it's okay to move on,
Right.
right? And focus on the bigger objective, which is the business, right? And then moved on to Rajesh, and he's been a leadership role for many, many people here, and trying to understand the long-term perspective of things. That's something I continue to learn. And lately, I've sort of also figured out that I think when you're in that space of figuring things out, you think there's like one mentor that's going to solve all your problems. And then I realized, look, there can be a mentor in everybody that you are interacting with, right? Like just take what you can. So that's the approach I'm taking now, not looking at one single person as a mentor.
Correct.
So that's how it is. So it's a great question for you to ask me because I also want to ask you the same question, right? So you got into tech. Can you share your story and what sort of mentorship that you've been experiencing so far?
Yeah, so for me, it's been very like I was interested in computer science since my school.
Okay.
So I had a very interesting teacher, and she, invoked this whole curiosity in me. So she was there, and then after that, I joined Zoho Schools.
Okay, perfect.
So
Nice.
then
Right,
Rajendran, so
right.
he
Yeah.
had a huge impact, and yeah, so I've just met. I think I've been very privileged to meet a very good set of people
Right.
throughout my life. I wouldn't just say in career, but
Right.
even at home, even my family, I think I've had a huge, I think I've been blessed.
Okay.
And I
That's a
really
very
like
nice way to
that.
put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you mentioned about the qualities, so I'm sure there are a lot of people you meet, and it's the qualities you pick up. because everybody has something that you might not agree with, but I'm sure there would be people who can give you something that you want to imbibe.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So
As long as we are open to look for it,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's been my journey.
That's amazing. That's in fact a great way to start this conversation. And I really want to shout out, give an appreciation to not just Nandini here, but also the team who's been behind the whole podcast, somebody who's behind the camera, setting up the room for us. So thank you so much for doing this. And
It's a pleasure.
yeah, and absolutely amazing to be here today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same here. Same here at all. So, you've been into enterprise management, and what exactly does that entail? Because I'm sure it would involve a lot of different aspects of running your IT infrastructure for any organization. So, if you can like shed light about what exactly management entails, I think that'll be probably a good way to start.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Indeed. So when we're talking about enterprise IT management, it's a mouthful, right? You're saying enterprise IT management, but there's a simpler way to sort of look at this, right? When you're looking at different digital touch points that you have in your organization, anything that helps you manage those are basically what enterprise IT management is, right? So take a very simple example. You started your journey in Zoho a while back, right? What happened when people onboarded you? You've got it.
A lot of touch points because I had to give an interview for Zoho Schools, and that included a lot of background check and all
Right,
of that. Yeah.
right. All of that being sort of done, being done through the IT. And when you joined, the first thing that possibly happened was you got the ID, email ID, right? That email ID, using that email ID, you ended up accessing the different applications. You got your device also. All of that was ready on the day one when you started working, right? So when you just look at employee in that sense, the different touch points that they have, that's a very good way for us to understand what enterprise IT management is. So you have an employee, they have an identity, and they access applications, they have a few devices. You and I are connecting through Wi-Fi here. So the infrastructure and the application. And this particular room where we are doing this recording, it's the workplace services that your organization provides. So all of this sort of encompasses enterprise IT management. And when you sort of break it down to an atomic level, these five things is all that matters. Anything that helps you manage your identity, manage your device, access, infrastructure, and your network. So that's that. And one layer on top of it, what we mean by management is essentially you joining an organization is one thing, switching to different departments, that means you need different application access to applications or to workplace. All of that is in a way your employee life cycle, right? So like that, if you sort of break down the life cycle for every other aspect of enterprise IT, that becomes one aspect, right? Once you do that, you need to know if something is performing as much as it's supposed to. Your simple thing is your endpoint device. Are you getting a blue screen that often? What happens when something gets patched, right? So that's the other aspect, which is the automation, monitoring and automation aspect. The last one is the security, right? How do you keep all of these fundamental blocks secure? There are multiple ways to look at it, and it's not all of this that I mentioned is not like one kill switch or one particular functionality in a product, but it's actually a combination of multiple things. So these two layers sort of form what the whole enterprise IT management is. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So has it been different? Probably like let's say 10 or 15 years back,
Right.
and what it is today. Do you see any evolution that it has had?
Right. So in a nice way to look at it is I often compare my work experience with my parents or my grandparents, right? So the way you look at it, I think my parents were still in the log period where they go write things on a paper. Today in Zoho and Manage Engine, everything is paperless, right? So that's the transformation I sort of see run through. And this transformation that you see is sort of propelled, or it happened because of certain technological shifts that we've had. Right? The first thing is the on-premises software. Being able to sell that online is one big aspect. The other one, cloud, mobile, all of that came in. That sort of propelled a lot of technology, how it shaped technology in different organizations. The way I'm sort of seeing enterprise IT management have evolved over the years is in a way similar to how enterprises moved from offline to online. So the digital transformation, the usual keyword, but it matters a lot because that's the domain we are all in. And if you just look at the way the digital transformations happened in the product, you sort of understand how the evolution has happened in enterprise IT, right? Um, I was telling you about people still logging in the books, everything on the ledgers. Even today, we see a lot of retails still do that. But the idea is the first step for organizations to go digital is to make it like a system of record. Bring anything that's offline online into a digital space, right? Once you've done that, you have good amount of data that's you can get access to. That means with that data, you can start figuring out the insights that was not available to you before, right? A simple Excel sheet is going to give you some graph, like understand and imagine that data sort of getting scaled. So a simple example here would be, say for example, you had multiple devices in the organization and they ran a patch update, right? What usually happens in an organization when that happens is the next day or immediately 1 2 hours later, you see so many tickets coming in or so many calls that they have to take. So this association in the system of record era was in two different places. In system of insights, you're able to correlate, oh, this is what's happening. And once you correlate that, you take action. You take action in the sense, okay, so every time we patch, we cannot roll it out to all our employees. We'll have to figure out first, test that in a certain group, and then slowly 1 2 3 4 phases we sort of release. So all of this is the output of the insights that you get. What do you
Yeah,
do with it?
correct.
That's
Yeah.
the system of workflows, right? That's when we're trying to correlate multiple things and all of that. So where the workflow comes in is if you sort of observe, we are essentially trying to uh, increase efficiency of the business and IT operations. That's what's at the end it comes to. How do you increase collaboration? How do you increase automation and all of that? So once the organizations have come to a very mature state at this point, um, it then sort of translate into a different form. The form, which is the experience. We've figured out how to do business, how to be efficient. Now, how do I translate that into some value for my employees and my customers? So that's the fourth era, which is the system of experience. Even today, I'm sure your bank experience and my bank experience would be very different because that personalization has happened, and your the way you interact with the bank sort of entails like what are the offers that you get versus what I do, the purchases I do. So that's the way we're talking about experiences. Similarly, if you take the employee side, the employee experience essentially is you belong to a certain function, your experience is very different, right?
Right. Yeah.
And if you are belonging to a different geography, it's different,
Correct.
right? So all of that is being personalized, and that's where the system of experiences
Comes in.
comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want you to, the last one that we're going to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
can you guess what that era is going to be?
Post probably collaboration between different companies. I'm not
We
sure.
are in the era of AI, right? So we are essentially talking about building system of intelligence, right? The last aspect. I think we've you just started to get into that space, even though we've been doing AI for so long, right? But the intelligence we're just starting to tap into. The I mean, it sort of puts everything that happened before into an absolutely different light, because for intelligence to happen you need the data, you need the workflows. You need to understand what experiences you're going to define and then make it a lot more easier using intelligence. So that's where we're starting to get to. And these are the 5 phases. And I think this is similar to how enterprise IT is also mimicking in that sense.
Okay, okay. So as you mentioned, the shift from, let's say, the offline ledger to the online, I'm sure, is a giant leap for people who are using the offline ledger. And I'm sure there would be constraints or challenges they might be facing. So, why is it that people are hesitant today to move online? And maybe if you can like share what are the actual challenges that probably organizations face.
Right.
Yeah, so
Right. Um, Again, just to have that sense of evolution at the back of the mind when we are discussing this, um, initially, the way you look at IT org in a company, it used to be the technology provider for the company, right? It used to dictate, use this device, use this application, and all of that. You understand what happens when somebody dictates you do this, do that.
yeah.
It's probably the reason why we're seeing that bit of hesitancy.
Okay.
But today, you're working in a company which is almost it's a digital enterprise in that sense. You have the freedom to use the tool that you want to use with some bit of what do I say um, changing recommendation that comes from your IT department, right? Like that happens. But today you have that freedom to use, and so you're able to use it a lot more. So when you actually look at the challenges that IT had then, is to convince people, please use this. Today they are like, please don't use that. That's not a good tool to use because it's not safe. So that's where IT is sort of in. So the amount of applications that has proliferated in a business environment is absolutely insane. Like you and I are talking right now, and I have like 40 to 50 tabs open with easily 10 to 15 applications on it. So that's the space that we're talking about, and just me. So imagine multiply that and all of that. So it's absolutely insane amount of data and applications that, and that I think that's where the real challenge for IT is that when people are starting to use their own tools to increase their productivity, it does help the business to deliver what it needs to deliver. But what it essentially does to IT org is that it opens up a few backdoors into the system, which they are supposed to secure, right? And one backdoor gone wrong, open to somebody who's not supposed to see it, is going to cost the business a lot. Like, I'm not sure if you know, like in the last couple of years, how many hotels have had the problem of ransomware? That's simply because one of the employees at some point didn't lock the door properly, if I may use that, right? So it actually sort of impacts the business. So that's the security aspect of the digital dexterity that everybody has is a big challenge for IT today. It was not like that before because IT guarded everything. Everything was on premises. You are using only the apps I'm asking you to use. So that was more control. Today they are in a very uncertain place, unknown place. It's good for business, but we'll have to somehow balance it out, right? So that's another challenge that IT has. And the other one, if you sort of see, is I was telling you about the democratization that happened. Like you can use your applications. What essentially it means is IT org is still a cost to an organization, right? So when I don't know what you're using, I can't own the cost. I can't be responsible for the cost that I don't even know I'm spending, right? So that's also the FinOps aspect is also like very difficult for IT teams to do it today. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's you shed light on it really well, I would say.
Right.
And different aspects of it definitely, have a lot of challenges. And I think awareness, I think
Right.
for all of the employees is
Correct.
something that's really
Absolutely.
important. Yeah, because
Absolutely.
as you said, the backdoor thing,
Yeah.
a lot of employees would probably not be aware that, this could probably lead to something bigger.
Correct. Correct.
So I think it's just security awareness and
Right.
all of these programs that organizations have to, take a conscious effort to actually
Correct.
educate their employees. Yeah, so you must be facing or you must be talking to a lot of CEOs in your career. And what is something that you have seen that could probably help them to become better at their job,
Right.
or probably,
Okay.
I mean, okay, no, I wouldn't put it like that. I
Okay.
wouldn't put it like that,
Okay.
but just some kind of tips and tricks that could probably help them
Right.
in organizing their IT infrastructure, or
Right.
let's say not just IT, but anything like
Right.
maybe to run their organization
Right.
in a better and a more, let's say, comprehensive way.
Right. Yeah. So again, we've sort of looking at this question at the backdrop of the evolution that we talked about. The reason that's important is because for any CIO in their organization, their IT org is unique to their organization. So there can be number of best practices outside, but they can't apply the same thing here. So the first one, again, you've sort of led my answer in the sense you were talking about the awareness of the security. Similarly, CIOs has to understand like what is their IT arc, what is the size of the arc, what are the aspirations that the businesses have from IT. Are we still moving in offline to online? Are we still in that space, or are we trying to increase the operational efficiency of the business and IT? If either case, the way you would approach is very, very different. And in case understanding the maturity, digital maturity of the organization, and there might be organizations where the board of directors would be on top of CIOs to say, look, there's something happening in AI. Like, let's do something with it, right? And CIOs has to they'll have to respond to that. But they also have to balance a few things there, right? So just because something is nice to have doesn't mean we need to have it. So that's also another way to sort of look at it. And of course, the way CIOs today, I mean, discussed about how today the businesses is also participating in
Mm-hmm.
technology.
Right.
Like you are
Yeah.
using the applications, right? So when business is also doing that, one of the key challenges that not just as an IT org, that as CIO has is they'll have to think about it as a technology partnership and not technology ownership, right? When that dialogue changes that way, the way you would look at how are you going to solve different problems within IT and for business would be very, very different. So that's probably one way to look at it. Look,
Yeah. Yeah. So how would you probably navigate through your priorities, or
right,
let's say if you were in a CIO, or let's say the board of directors position, how would
right,
you navigate through that,
right,
considering, okay, this is where you know the business has to go,
right,
and you know the challenges you're facing in IT
right,
right now, right, like today. So how would you sync these up
right.
so that they are on the same path?
Okay. See, the first thing from the CEO, uh, uh, the desk, I would say, is to sort of bring out the value of IT, right? For a very long time, IT has been that back end business, right? That's a cost center for the organization. But today, all enterprises are digital enterprises. So at some point, CIOs have to feel the room, get into the middle of it, and start discussing technology stuff with the executives and leadership, right? So that's one attitude change that CIOs might have to change, and not just that, right? Like the way CIOs have grown in an organization through the tech leadership, right? They end up understanding different technology. So that's their expertise. But today they are in a place where they have to negotiate with the business. So people have to definitely understand how do you relate the technology or the IT field to the business outcomes that comes in. So a simple way to look at this is imagine that the business is coming and coming to the IT or the board of directors to say, look, I need to expand this particular this particular function or the digital service to a different geography, right? 20, 30 years back, it's a CEO's decision. Today is a technology decision because if you're going to expand to a geography, You need to have data centers. You need to have people running. Data is getting transferred. How do you keep that secure? All of that is going to cost, also going to cost money, right? So CIO has to come in and say like, this is what it's gonna, this is what is technologically feasible. And okay, if this is not something that we can do, how about we try something else? So they sort of get into the problem solving along with the business. And again, that's something that CIOs have to figure out, how do they navigate through all of that, right? So
Right, yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
The other example that I was thinking was like, somehow I'm relating you to Gen Z here,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So a very fun thing to sort of have a thought experiment is, I know you've not been to a bank in your life, right? Or have you?
Not for anything that I actually need. I
Yes,
mean, with
probably
my
helping out
parents,
your
yeah, yeah,
elders, that's
yeah,
different for
yeah.
you,
No,
right? So your experience with banks started in a mobile phone,
yeah,
right? For me, it was different. I started in a web browser. My parents started in a physical uh, bank, right? So again, seeing how the different experiences that, so this is where the idea of technology actually comes in, right? So CIOs today can say, look, we have a certain set of target audience which is very unique and it is digital first, and there are different ways in which we can address this particular, in give them a personalized experience and all of that, right? So they can, CIOs can also get into the business side of things. It's not just the business side coming to say this is what you can do, because they own the data, they have the insights, right? So that's also another way to look at
yeah. That makes a lot of sense actually. Yeah, because my experience, like when I have conversations with elders at home, they're like, "Yeah, let's just go to the bank and we'll figure
it.
it out."
Right,
You can just call them up and
right,
it'll be done on the app.
right.
So
And I'm sure they probably haven't used credit card as much. I use credit card. I know you guys use only UPI,
yeah, yeah,
right?
UPI,
Right.
yeah,
That's like a big change,
correct.
and which can certainly be used for the business.
Yeah,
In a,
for
yeah.
sure, because it is convenient, and at the end of the day, I think convenience is what customers want.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, so I'm sure, okay, so this is a tech podcast,
Right.
and any tech podcast these days cannot be without AI.
Right.
So how do you think operationalizing AI
Right.
into IT would probably, like, what path should CIOs
Right.
take
Right.
to integrate this?
Right. Right. So one thing, that the elephant in the room is that AI is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's probably listening to us right now. Somebody is going into Notebook LLM and doing that transcribing, right? So yeah, AI is everywhere, but the way I sort of look at it is in sort of first principles. Just go back to time, right? What is the purpose of a tool? Can you,
Just get the work done.
yes,
Yeah.
right? Just get the work done.
Yeah.
Um, an analogy that I can possibly use is, can you take a hammer to a sword fight? Just because you have the hammer, will that help you? No, right? Probably need a shield or a sword. Prefer a shield over a sword, but that's the difference. So also look at AI in that sense, where yes, that's an amazing technology today, but I first have to figure out what is the business use case that I have. Without the use case, any tool, any technology is useless, because we can't go and tell, like, I can't tell you this is hammer, figure out what to do with it, right? That's not going to work, because it's not the work that I want to do, right? So similarly, AI, we sort of approach it in that sense. Even though yes, people be making like crazy amount of leapfrogs just in 3 or 4 weeks, months, if I may, and there will certainly be a sort of a pressure that's coming from the top, from BODs or the executives, to figure out what to do with AI. But I think a lot of conviction sort of comes from, where do we start? What's the biggest problem that we need to address today? So I'd rather focus on this aspect, is the word that you use to get my work done, my work, right? So essentially, that's where the use case is for AI. When you sort of look at work, go through your whole day, figure out which are the moments which has a leverage, which adds leverage to your profile or your function, and which are the ones that are eating away your time, the overheads, right? If you look at those two things and figure out what is the overhead that you can pass on to AI, that's an easy way to sort of look at. So that's how you sort of uh, spot where you can start operationalizing AI in your organization. A simple thing would be, I think, a lot of thing that keeps coming up is when you're doing incidents, the moment you are actually on a severity one ticket, all you need to do is figure out a way to get things online. So you're not focusing about, okay, this happened there, let me write it down. So let me call some other person and let me bring that chat here. Let me figure out what are the responses I got from my server and let me attach it here. None of those things. All you care about is how do I get it operational as soon as possible,
Correct. Yeah.
right? But what AI can possibly do here is gather all the data and put it as a summary here, put it as a postmortem here, right? So those are all the overheads that I'm talking about where we can look at it. This is one aspect where CIOs are actually identifying the overheads that can be given to the AI. The other aspect is also where vendors like us come in,
Okay.
right? Today, a lot of vendors are slapping on the AI powered, AI enhanced words, but maybe if the CIOs are not looking at doing something extraordinarily amazing with respect to AI in their organization today, because the risk is insane, they can choose to use some of the AI implementations that the vendors are giving,
Got it.
and
Yeah.
that can have its own scope, right? The biggest friction, if I may, the AI friction that CIOs have today is AI doesn't have a uh, rollback option. Once you're in, your data is exposed. It's out there. You have no control over what it's going to do, right? Um, Whereas when you look at traditional workflows, traditional IT with the systems, it's very different. You can go back, retrace your steps to previous, and then sort of roll back to that place. And you understand who is doing what and all of that. But in AI, you can't do it. So that's a lot of risk for the CIO to take in. So if they're not prepared to do all of that, it's very understandable because they are, in the sense, responsible for the whole enterprise, the digital footprint of the whole enterprise. So that is agreed. So maybe possibly think about what different vendors are doing there and figure out the different AI functionalities that they have and start there in a small experiment. One last thing too is we keep talking about how the employees are using their own set of apps and that, right? So one way to also look at it is figure out what's that they're using. If they're using that, then maybe there's like the test environment which is using it for a certain reason. For example, developers using the copilot, right? Like simple as that. If that's working there, how do we make that into every other aspect? So that's also one way to think about how you can operationalize AI.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So, what is the biggest myth about AI and enterprise management?
That's a very important question, but also a very tough question to answer. So biggest myth, again, it's the tool aspect, right? Just because something has AI in it doesn't make that AI enhanced, right? It certainly doesn't. Does it add value just because something is AI? No. We definitely have to have a very good understanding of what that is, and then look at technologies, look at vendors and all of that. So that's
Okay.
the yeah.
Okay. All right. So, how does the future look like for enterprise management?
I think honestly, I feel like I'm in the driver's seat of
Okay.
technology evolution
Okay.
because we are definitely at an inflection point, if I may, with respect to what technology can do in our lives, and I'm sort of in a way grateful to be part of that evolution revolution in the next coming years, simply because I know the way in which I start interacting with my organization, with the different applications, even on the personal side and the consumer side, is going to just change completely in the next 4 or 5 years. So definitely something I'm excited about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then any trends or technological innovations that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think one thing that we possibly cannot even miss is how China today is sort of changing the whole game of AI. In that sense, I've actually like studied a little bit about how different countries are approaching AI as well. So one aspect is the China. I think they sort of released the general AI agents just a couple of days back, and that's gonna blow up like insanely crazy in the next couple of months, couple of years, right?
Yeah,
So
even DeepSeek is,
DeepSeek, yeah,
yeah,
DeepSeek,
it's,
Manus, all of that are going to absolutely change the way we operate. Which is why I'm saying like the driver's seat in a Formula One race. That's how it feels right now. So yeah, that's something I'm really excited about. But again, the rational mind of me, like that's my creative mind, playful mind. Rational mind, I see, look, there are compliances. Look, there are security guardrails that you need. It's not gonna be that easy to do it. So we'll have to figure out how this plays out for the enterprises in the end.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
at the end we do want to be secure as well.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right,
so I'm sure all of these will come into the picture,
right.
and the legal side of it is also working really
Yes,
hard and
yes,
fast.
yes.
So hopefully future looks bright for all of us.
Right. Yeah.
Done. All right. It was great having you on the show, Parna.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for the opportunity, and good luck with every other episode too. I'll be
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you so
yeah,
much. All
yeah.
right.
Thank you.
See you.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.